This is the
Five Stars
podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
So, what do you guys want to talk about? Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Yo, how's it going, everyone? It is currently Sunday morning as I'm recording this, which means it's daylight savings. And you know what that means. It means I got an extra hour of sleep last night. How about that? I'm sure everyone else is well rested. Hopefully. I love not having to set alarms. Just let the phone do all the work. 'Cause I'm lazy. So it's public service announcement time. Kind of figured I was going to have to pre-plan for this ahead of time. There will not be a Friday podcast this coming week. Things were very hectic for me over the weekend, and I had virtually no extra time to sit down to watch any of the classic material. And because I'm not really in the mood to try to cram everything in throughout the week, we're going to take a powder this coming Friday. So if you have the bell notification turned on and you're subscribed to the channel, just know that there won't be a Friday episode this coming week. And things are going to get a little weird throughout the month of November and December. Just to warn you all in advance, I'm going to try to keep things active, but there might be some breaks in the podcast flow, depending on how things turn out in the schedule. I'm still trying to confirm dates for upcoming weeks. The whole thing is a hot mess right now. For now, we'll do Retro Raw. I did have enough time to watch that over the weekend. Folks, this is the Five Starr Wrestling Report, the wrestling podcast nobody knows but everybody needs. I really appreciate all that come back to check out the show every Monday and Friday on YouTube or Rumble. It's been a very up and down progression over the last 3 years I've been doing this. It's been a steady influx of subscribers, but there have also been periods of drought, so to speak. It's really hard these days to tell the bot accounts from regular accounts. Like YouTube, I know, has been heavily cracking down on bot channels, deleting comments, deleting channels, trying to erase inactive accounts that haven't been touched in a while. It's affected my channel, no doubt. Not to the same degree as more popular channels. But hopefully you're somebody that genuinely likes to come hear me rant and rave about classic wrestling. I don't proclaim to be the best at what I do. Never have. I'm just a really passionate wrestling fan and sort of a geek when it comes to history. It might seem like I know a lot when you watch the channel. Most of that knowledge either comes from tape studying or just plain reading books. I've got a lot of wrestling biographies. Do I have time to read any of them? No. But do I still buy books thinking I'm ever going to have time to read them? Sure do. Because I'm smart. Hey, you know what? At least I'm putting my money to good use. Not blowing it on gambling or drugs or only fools. I don't think you can actually say the real thing on YouTube without getting flagged. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's get into the show and stop talking about needless crap that nobody cares about. All right, well, it's the big one. For the first time in God knows how long, maybe the first time ever since we started doing these Retro Raw deep dives, I was actually really looking forward to this one. Granted, for one particular part of the show, everything else was virtually useless. But remember that whole tirade I did the other week, talking about how if you're willing to sit through 30 minutes of dreck just to get that one singular 5 to 10 minute great segment on Raw, asking whether or not it was worth it? Well, I'd argue it is. Last week it was the Bret Austin interview. And this week, it was Austin showing up to crash Pillman's humble abode. And we're going to talk all about that absurdity when we get to that part. Multiple parts, in fact. But first I have to talk about some other shite that perpetrated my screen. Starting from the top here with Goldust versus Barry Windham's porn stash. Yeah, somebody thought that was a good idea. Barry, why don't you grow out a mustache? That'll be a great look for you. It was not. In fact, it was very distracting and unpleasant. So yeah, they're still calling him the Stalker, but now they've ditched the face paint. And Vince outright called him Barry Windham multiple times during this segment. So they've pretty much conceded defeat on that gimmick experiment. I should also note here that Barry is allegedly captaining one of the babyface teams for Survivor Series. It's him, Mark Marrow, Mark Henry, and Rocky Maivia. And they're facing Goldust, Triple H, Crush, and Jerry Lawler. Judging that Goldust was wrestling here, I'd presume he was also the team captain for the heels. Now, one might think, considering the family history with the Rhodes and the Wyndhams, you might figure, hey, this will probably be a decent match, right? Well, it might have been, had they bothered to actually pay attention to the action instead of spending half the goddamn thing in a split screen with Stone Cold on the phone talking to Vince. So while you've got a match going on in the background, Stone Cold's on the phone driving to Brian Pillman's house, vowing to take a lesson from the Book of Stone Cold, chapter 25:17. Quote, I will strike down upon your ass with great senses and furious anger. Okay, got to admit, that is 1,000 times better than Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass. No cap. By the way, sidebar. This is 1996. How the fuck did Austin have such good cell phone reception in his car? There wasn't Bluetooth. And I'll tell you, cellular service wasn't that great back in the day. How did they even do this on a live feed? Here's the only thing I cared to note about the match. They did a bunch of boring wrestling spots for a while until all the Survivor Series teammates got into a fight. For the record, this is not a lumberjack match. Somehow the match was thrown out. I didn't even see how. There was a very awkward spot that they caught on camera momentarily. You see Hunter standing behind Barry Windham, but he's not doing anything to indicate that he's going to attack him. In fact, he actually at one point puts his arm around him and starts to shield himself behind Barry. And then you see Mr. Perfect run over and talk to him for a brief sec before they both run away. Did Hunter forget that Barry was on the opposing team? Or am I just having a stroke? I did ask the other week when they randomly decided to turn Barry face. Apparently nobody clued Hunter into that change. Also, I know this is completely rhetorical. Why are these teams fighting? I know it seems like such a surface level question. Beyond them needing to book a bunch of random Survivor Series elimination matches, what is the reason for these specific teams being pitted against one another? Why are Goldust and Barry Windham team captains for no discernible reason? Why is The Rock randomly a part of the babyface team when we've never seen him introduced prior to this show? These are just a handful of questions that I'm bothering to ask out loud. Questions that I still do not have answers to. And it's been 29 years since this pay-per-view took place. Speaking of questions I still have 29 years after the pay-per-view, this Undertaker-Mankind feud. Let's take a step back. They've gone from boiler room brawl to buried alive to now it's the Undertaker versus Mankind in a regular singles match with Paul Bearer suspended above the ring in a cage. And apparently by his ankles, according to the deal they shot on WWF Superstars, The Undertaker went to reveal the shark cage gimmick. And when Terry Gordy went to rip off the giant curtain, there was a blow-up doll of Paul Bearer inside hanging upside down from the top of the cage. So is that part of the stipulation? Paul has to hang upside down in the cage through the entire match? Is it possible to get reverse vertigo? Because that's basically what I would anticipate happening to Paul in that situation. It's one thing to be hanging above the ring in a shark cage, but to also have to hang upside down in the process? Yeah, that would kind of suck. A lot of blood flow to the head, if you know what I mean. Anyway, let's talk about this Pillman-Austin deal. The part one of it, at least. So they advertised the other week. The WWF crew was going to travel to Pillman's home in Cincinnati, or just outside the suburbs of Cincinnati where Pillman lived. And they were going to talk to him about his health, considering he just had reconstructive surgery on his left knee. Then, of course, when Austin caught wind of the fact that the team was traveling to Pillman's home, he decided, Austin that is, that he was going to pay Pillman a visit in person. Now, since we're taking a page out of the Jesse Ventura playbook, and we're just trying to ask questions. Let's begin here. Brian Pillman has had 7 days to prepare for Austin to show up to his home. Number one, why didn't he arrange to have local armed policemen surrounding his home for this particular occasion? And more importantly, number two, knowing that Stone Cold was threatening to show up, knowing that he was probably not coming to offer Pillman a friendly handshake, why the fuck did Pillman not have his wife leave the house? His kids did. Kevin Kelly told us that at the beginning of the show. But then in the same breath, he told us that his wife was still in the home. Why? Did this not come up anywhere in the conversation when Brian was talking about how to protect his family? Seems like it'd be a good call to maybe have his wife staying somewhere else when there is a potential gunfight that could break out. Seems logical to me. But what do I know? I've never been married. I've never had to have these tough conversations. So they start the interview in Pillman's living room, and Kelly's asking pretty baseline questions about what Pillman's recovery status looks like, how he plans to respond to Austin's attack on Superstars a week or two back. And Pillman's doing the fiery babyface-like promo, saying he's going to whip Austin's ass and show just how crazy Pillman can be. And then as they're talking, Vince interrupts and indicates that Austin was seen circling the property. How he obtained this information, your guess is as good as mine, but let's just roll with it. And this is where Pillman reveals that he's armed himself. He's armed, cocked, and ready to unload with his 9mm, or whatever they said it was, his Glock. Okay, so Brian has a gun. Pretty intense situation, right? Pillman shows off the gun. Everyone in the room starts panicking and showing signs of concern. Tensions are high, so to speak. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems like an ample time to cut to commercial. Because we've got sponsor plugs, damn it. Pillman might be outside right now unloading a whole case into Austin's cranium. But hey, Karate Fighter toys are out, people. Way more important. No, as it turns out, Pillman was not outside unloading bullets into Austin. In fact, it was Austin who was unloading on some of Pillman's buddies. Which brings me to question number 3. So Pillman decided not to involve armed police, but he did arrange to have 2 of his extremely fat, out-of-shape, untrained friends be used as fodder for Austin to beat up in the driveway. That seems incredibly dim-witted. Here's the thing that I loved. As silly and hokey as the whole thing was, it wasn't even the visual of watching Austin beat up 2 untrained geeks. It was the fact that while Austin is beating up 2 untrained geeks, There's a cameraman casually filming the whole thing, and they make sure to properly place two giant stage lights on opposite ends of the driveway to make sure everything can be captured in full. Because we've got to have good lighting for this unpremeditated fight. Yeah. This is why I can never be part of a booking committee. Especially during this time. Oh, and by the way, I'm not entirely convinced that Austin didn't legitimately kill the one dude when he threw one of those play wagons at his head. Dear God. You know what I'm talking about, right? The red pulley wagons that we all used to have growing up. Yeah, Austin chucked one of those as hard as humanly possible right at the guy's fucking head. I don't know if you know this or not. Those wagons were not light. So, well, you know, as expected, there's a man attempting to break into another man's house. He just presumably committed first-degree murder in the driveway. Probably an ideal time to cut away so we can go to the ring for Alex the Pug versus the Sultan. I see nothing out of the ordinary with this. It was during this match where Lawler, the voice of reason, finally had the instinct to inform Pillman that at this point, his best course of action to protect himself would be to call the police. No shit? You think? So here's where the payoff came. Oh yeah, the Sultan won. I don't care. Neither did anyone else. They cut back to Pillman's home. Once again, his wife is cowering behind him while Kevin Kelly is standing next to him with derp face the whole time. At no point does it ever dawn on Pillman that maybe they should leave the room in case things get ugly. Nope. They're just going to stand there and witness the whole thing go down. So Austin begins smashing one of Pillman's back doors. Glass is shattering all over the place. Apropos, I guess. And so Austin kicks the door down. Pillman's wife begins screaming to the top of her lungs. And as Austin makes a beeline toward the living room, they then cut to a shot of Pillman, who is now aiming the gun directly at Austin's head. And he's about to pull the trigger when static feed. Convenient. That was the cliffhanger they left us on. Pillman has presumably blown Stone Cold to smithereens. Brain matter is now plastered all over the walls and floor. His entire home is now a fucking crime scene. A crime scene, by the way, that is documented on camera to be used as video evidence. Well, in actuality, there was more to come. Yes, I was joshing. That was not the payoff. It was a teaser to set up the final thing we saw before the program cut off. Because we still have a show to run, damn it. Sure, there might have been a cold-blooded murder that was just captured for the entire world to see. But we still got a format to get through. We're paying for this TV time. May as well use it. We need to go back to the ring so Jim Ross can interview Sid Vicious and Shawn Michaels. Just never mind that whole gun situation you saw minutes ago. So, well, just to briefly catch you all up to speed, they've been shooting various angles between Sid and Shawn where they're making it seem like they're not on the same page, even though they're technically supposed to be baby faces. And, well, that appeared to be the direction they were going right up until about this week, where it seemed like they were attempting to turn Sid heel from out of the blue, as he was spitfiring some harsh words at Shawn during this promo battle. And of course, the whole thing blew up in their faces, because not only was Sid great during his delivery and all this, but the people were so behind everything involving Sid at this point, it actually got more heat on Shawn, which is the polar opposite of what Vince wanted. But now we know how we got the situation in MSG, where the fans decided they were going to cheer everything the heel did and despise everything the alleged babyface did. Probably didn't help matters any that Shawn was also out there in a woman's denim jacket. But here's basically everything they bickered about. Shawn claimed that he was responsible for bringing Sid back to the WWF, which Sid called bullshit on. Then Shawn talked about how they've settled their previous differences, but when it comes to Survivor Series, Sid isn't in Shawn's league. To which Sid responds by going, "That's right, Shawn, I'm not in your league, because I don't play in the little leagues." Once again, this got a babyface reaction. Not a good look for Shawn. Then eventually, Shawn smacked the podium set up to try to get up in Sid's grill. And just as it looked like they were about to come to blows, out comes Camp Cornette to remind them that next week on Raw, they have to team up to face Owen and Bulldog for the tag titles, which I completely forgot about until they brought it up here. Then I remember the whole setup from the other week, when Owen volunteered to put up the tag belts against Shawn and Sid for no reason at all. So, Sid and Shawn got on the same page for all of about 2 minutes to beat up Camp Cornette. It was actually a 3-on-2 situation because Vader was out there as well, and the heels still got run off by the end of it. Now, the big takeaway during the brawl was when Owen went to hit Sid from behind with a chair, but Sid didn't see it. So when Shawn came in to grab the chair from Owen to run him off, Sid got up and saw Shawn pacing around the ring with the chair, thinking he was the one who hit him with it. So they get into another heated altercation before the heels try another attempt at ganging up on them. And like I said, they end up taking a powder anyway. They did get a good facial shot of Sid when he turned around and saw Shawn holding the chair in his hand. Very blank, very cold. He's just like, "You motherfucker. Tell me that wasn't you that hit me from behind with that chair." So that part was good. It's just such a counterintuitive way for them to go about building this program. The idea that they're supposed to be feuding, but they're also trying to distract the fans from booing Shawn by putting him in these situations where he's actively teaming with Sid, thinking it'll cushion the blow a little bit. It's actually very clever on Vince's part. Like, instinctually, he knows everybody hates Shawn and they're sick of the act. So he's deliberately pairing him and Sid together as a tag team so that people can't completely shit on everything Shawn does. Now, again, Survivor Series pretty much put that theory to bed. There's a reason it's often remembered more for the fan reaction than the actual match itself. But we'll get to that when we get there. Then we had Mark Mero versus the Fake Razor. The TV main event. I didn't even realize it was the TV main event until I looked at the timeline and saw there was like 10 minutes left in the show. Minutes into the match, we were joined via phone line with a man they informed us was named Kerwin. No context. No explanation as to who Kerwin was. Finally, about 2 minutes later, they put up a screen cap letting us know he was the WWF director. The man spearheading the whole escapade happening at Pillman's property at the moment. Again, another deal where the announcers are completely disengaged and not even bothering to call the action. Vince was trying to figure out if they were going to reconnect the satellite feed to see what was happening in Cincinnati. But the director was saying the guys in the truck are too scared to go out and get involved. You know, because there's a gunfight currently going on. Valid excuse. Of course, then Vince and Lawler are trying to figure out whether the authorities were called. And the answer we got was something to the extent of, well, we alerted them, but they don't seem to be showing up. Sounds like stellar police enforcement. Now that's a police crew I would want monitoring my neighborhood. Oh yeah, the match here was fucking atrocious. I don't think there was a single thing Bogner did in this match that didn't look sloppy and or botched. He at one point fucked up a clothesline spot in the corner so badly that Mark Mero didn't even bother selling it. Screw it, I'm just gonna cut to the end. Nobody cares. Hunter and Mr. Perfect came out to run a distraction so Hunter could shove Mero off the top rope. And then Bogner hit a shitty razor's edge for the pin, which the announcers barely drew attention to. And then we finally got the final footage of the Pillman-Austin saga. So, it's so hard to keep a straight face trying to recap all this. Like, looking back, I'm not entirely sure how I ever thought any of this was any good. Now that I'm recapping everything and trying to make sense of a completely senseless situation, nothing that we directly saw take place here would ever happen in the real world. It's astonishing. So they cut to Austin's living room. Or not Austin's, Pillman's living room. May as well have been Austin's living room now. And Pillman is now being restrained by his friends. His wife is sobbing in the background. Kevin Kelly once again standing in the background with a microphone looking like the spare prick at the wedding. Sorry, Jim. It's a great line. Had to steal it. Even though it's Adrian Streets. Now, considering everything else we previously recapped, if you thought all of that was ridiculous, you haven't seen anything until we get to this final segment. Now, it's been well over 15 minutes since we last saw anything involving these two. We last left off with Pillman holding a gun point blank directly at Stone Cold's body. Since that point, not only has Pillman not fired a single shot, but now Austin has vanished. Pillman is now being restrained by random people. There's at least 6 or 7 of these motherfuckers holding Pillman down. At no point does anybody logically say to themselves, probably would be a good time to get the gun away from Pillman before he does something stupid. No, instead, here's what happens. Austin reappears from the 4th dimension. These friends who were previously holding Pillman down let him go while he still has possession of the gun. That's the key. They didn't take the gun away from him. And then they let him go while he still had a loaded weapon in hand. So then they try to go to hold back Austin, who really is at this point no threat. He doesn't have a weapon. He doesn't have a gimmick. The only thing he has are his bare fists. And I can tell you right now, when it comes to a bare fist versus gunfight, the gun is going to win. Unless you're Chuck Norris. So again, they go to hold back Austin, who I guess at that point was being shoved out of the house by these random people we've never seen. And then, of course, while that's going on, Pillman is once again pointing this fucking gun barrel at Austin from off camera, begging for them to let him go so he can blow his brains out. Meanwhile, Kevin Kelly and Jerry Lawler are rationally screaming to the top of their lungs, "Somebody get the gun!" Kelly, I think, at one point shouted, "Call the police!" That moment, right there, that one fucking line, "Call the police." 3 words. But boy, did it speak volumes. It had escalated to the point we were at now. Somebody finally had the wherewithal to shout, "Call the police." Nobody ever thought to do that in the last, I don't know, say 20 fucking minutes. And in fact, the thought just occurred to me. Didn't Kerwin inform us that police were called earlier when he was on the phone with Vince? This is the worst local police authority I've ever seen. These numbnuts can't do anything. Fuck Cincinnati. And then, of course, they cut the feed away before you actually hear Pillman fire off any shots, because obviously they weren't going to have Pillman use an actual loaded gun on camera. Which then begs yet another question. Why even bother doing any of this? aside from clickbait ratings grabs. Ugh. Yeah, I don't know, dude. All these classic moments that people say are timeless moments throughout wrestling history. I really would like to know how people can argue this still holds up 30 years later. I remember watching this as a kid and being so blown away with it. Like, people were always talking about this stuff in school, back when wrestling was actually cool. You know, we were kids. We were in, I don't know, I guess middle school at this point. Actually, no, was that? I wasn't in middle school. I was in elementary school. But yeah, I mean, we would kind of talk about this stuff during lunch and recess. And yeah, we're stupid kids. You know, we saw it and we were marking out for it. Now, having gone back and rewatched it with my adult brain, poking holes in every logic gaffe I could find, this shit was kind of dumb as fuck. Like, objectively speaking, even if you watch the whole thing in a vacuum and assume all logic is thrown out the window entirely, the entire setup for this thing was Austin threatening to go to Pillman's house to do what exactly? No, like, think about it. What was his plan? To beat him up again? I know it fits Austin's gimmick around this time, but was there really no other purpose for him showing up to Pillman's house other than to scare and or fight him again? I mean, he wasn't going to rob him or rape his wife or any other rationale you'd account for home invasions. He literally drove from Victoria, Texas to Cincinnati, Ohio to confront Brian Pillman and threaten to beat his ass again. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, sounds like he could have just waited for Pillman to come back to Raw. Seems like a waste of gas just to do what Austin did here, which was very little, aside from damaging property. And in fact, you know what would have alleviated this whole situation to begin with? Austin showing up at Pillman's house here on Monday Night Raw. You know what they could have done? They could have booked Austin in a match so that he had to show up on Monday Night Raw. And if Austin didn't show up, they could fire him. That would have resolved this entire situation. But I'm sure Russo never thought about that in the booking meeting. He just thought, you know what would be cool, bro? Let's have Brian Pillman hold a pistol at Austin's head. And let's make it seem like he was going to blast his brains out. Because that's going to produce ratings, bro. That's going to generate eyeballs. Fucking pea-brain. And that wasn't even close to being one of the dumbest ideas Russo ever came up with. And I know I'm overanalyzing the shit out of all this. That's what I do here. Somebody's got to laugh about it. Elsewise, you'll drive yourself crazy trying to make sense of it. But yeah, I hold nothing back. It was stupid, dumb, ridiculous. Doesn't hold up. Sorry to burst all your bubbles, all you Attitude Era fanatics out there. This sucked. Can we just call it like it is? Yeah, it was funny. It was hokey, but not in a good way. This is just a precursor to all the bad shit we were about to see over the next few years. Whatever. I'm out of coffee, so I think I'm going to wrap it up on that note. My brain is fried trying to recap this whole fiasco. But folks, that'll do it for this Monday edition. And again, just to recap, there will not be a Friday show this coming week, so don't look out for that. We will reconvene next Monday for Retro Raw. Hopefully I'll have enough time set aside in my schedule to be able to watch classic footage for next Friday. But that'll be for then. Thanks, everyone, and take care. And don't go breaking in anybody's homes. Just a bad idea on general principle. Peace out.